Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. All right, welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul LaFavor. I'm here with my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn. And today is Friday, the 21st of October, 2022. I hope you're enjoying that cool weather as I am. It's about time. Today we have in the G base, we have Tony Cowden. Tony Cowden, for those of you who don't know, is a fellow barrel-chested freedom fighter. Been there, done it, got the t-shirt, SF guy, also owner of Capable Incorporated. He's been a lot of places that Mike and I have been, done a lot of things for our country. So, Tony, without further ado, I want to welcome you to the Pinelander, and I want to thank you in advance for your service to our country, abroad and at home. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, man. And probably just like you guys, it's, no thanks needed. College dropout here. What else was I going to do?
Got to do something. You're no stranger to Pineland. You're no stranger to guerrilla bases and all the rest of it and all the fun.
Sure.
But, you took on a challenge that I'm curious about. I know Paul is too.
Absolutely.
And you decided to run for Congress. And that, to me, is a challenge worthy of a Special Forces soldier. But it's a totally different environment than what generally we're accustomed to. Why don't you share with us some of the experiences that you had in that quest?
Oh man, as I joked with you a little bit before we started recording, Paul, my life is definitely a bunch of crappy decisions that turned out pretty awesome, and and that's how I could categorize deciding to run. Like everybody else, at least everybody else I know, I was absolutely frustrated with everything that's going on in our country, and clearly in the last year and a half since I made that decision to run, it hasn't improved. I only see things getting worse and worse.
No doubt.
Unless you're, Ray Charles, I think that's pretty much the agreement. Even Democrats, are starting to figure out, they may have made a bad decision.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was last Easter, so Easter of 21. I'd kicked it around a little bit. Hell, I'd even thought about maybe running for sheriff one day or something like that, just to give back. And my very good friend, Ilario Pantano. Ilario was a lieutenant. You might recognize his story, maybe not his name. He was a lieutenant who was charged with murder in Fallujah, Marine Corps infantry lieutenant. He shot the two guys, and then they had been having a rough time, man. He had some casualties amongst his platoon, and shot a couple of dirt bags, clearly bad guys, right? Fallujah, leave or you're a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And this was, week into the war. Long story short, man, he and his boys took him to the nearest traffic circle and put their battalion motto on a sign around their necks, around their bodies. So, it would be easy for civilians and folks who don't understand war to kind of go, what the hell? And even us, we'd probably going a little too far there, Marine. But long story short, man, he was, charged with murder. And he decided after he was cleared, and he was cleared, to run for Congress. And I met him. I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. I met him right about the time he decided to do that. Maybe a year prior. I opened a gym down in Wilmington, CrossFit Wilmington, and that's where I met a bunch of jarheads, clearly being so much closer to Jacksonville and Camp Lejeune. So anyway, Alario ran and twice, and he first lost to the Democrat incumbent, and then he lost to the primary to the current congressman for District 7, and that's David Rouser. Well, Alario learned a lot. Losing, he made a lot of friends, and you'll see, my story was the same way. Made a lot of friends and lots of benefits or pros to running. Extending my network, met a lot of great people, man, good people. But so Alario comes out and shoots with me. We're just out on the range, plinking and shooting a little bit, catching up. And I said, "Hey, man, what do you think about?" And he his whole entire demeanor changed. He cuts me off. He goes, "Yes, if there was ever a time or a year that you could do it, yes, absolutely." I mean, he didn't even let me finish. He knew exactly what I was getting ready to ask him. And it was kind of funny. And it was, like I said, it was Easter Day. And he even went, as far as saying, he's like, "Absolutely, it is Easter. And there's no doubt in my mind, Jesus put me right here, right now to tell you should do it." So whether or not, you're a Christian or, you believe in fate or whatever, that was what kind of said, all right, well, he knows a lot. He lost. He's still fairly involved in politics, or at least, keeps his finger on the pulse. And he said, "Do it." I was like, all right. So we started planning. Of course, I didn't announce until December, so we had quite a bit of time to plan. It worked out well because I was able to put a lot of, save money because I wasn't going to be working as much, during the campaign and all that stuff. But North Carolina was going through its redistricting, and we knew that districts were going to change. So I didn't want to announce that I was going to run in District 7 necessarily and piss off an incumbent like David Rouser, making an enemy where I didn't need one type of thing. So we just waited. And so the new districts popped out, and it was that District 4, which was Cumberland County, which I was excited about for obvious reasons. And Johnson County, Harnett County, and Sampson County, all rural, all my people. I was born and raised in Pamlico County, so I speak rural, redneck, even a little bit of white trash dialects of the English language. And so I was excited about it. And my biggest contender at the time, as we first started campaigning, was a fellow named Devan Barber. He's from Johnston County, and good boy. We actually became darn good acquaintances, if not friends, while running against each other. We even joked that, like, hey, when this is all said and done, no matter what's happening, man, let's go fishing. And I was like, deal. So me and him still owe each other a fishing trip. Well, that all changed, right? North Carolina's very liberal state Supreme Court ruled that those new districts were basically racist, gerrymandering, and they threw them out, and against the North Carolina Constitution, rewrote the districts how they saw fit. Right. So basically, if you think about it, every congressional seat in North Carolina right now is illegal. It's not real, or at least the ones that are going to be voted on in November, not the current ones, right? Because they were elected 2 years ago. The new districts, and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with our state legislature. They took it to the Supreme Court, but they basically said, it's a little too late in the election cycle for us to do anything about it. Yeah, wow. Horse shit all around, bro. I mean, anyway. So this is as I'm starting to really figure out just how absolutely crooked and what the games they're all playing, right? It's pretty nasty. And so, everything was going well. That 4th district, like I said, no incumbent, so no nastiness. Like myself, Devan, and a couple other candidates, man, just nice to each other. Just like, hey, this is me, this is my personality. We're all conservatives. We mostly all believe the same stuff. And it was chill. Well, then North Carolina redistrict, and it put my county, Sampson County, where I currently live, in the 3rd district. Incumbent is Greg Murphy. And Greg is adamant that you call him Dr. Greg Murphy. He's an MD. He's one of the very few sitting congressmen that is allowed to have another job other than be a congressperson. And because there's a loophole for doctors, and he exploits it. Now, the first doctor to create this loophole and have it was actually an obstetrician, somebody who delivers babies. Well, Greg is a urologist, and he exploits it. He's only one of a couple of doctors on Capitol Hill, right? And so he keeps, he's double dipping as a urologist and a congressperson. I mean, he's missed votes because he was performing surgery, at Vidant there in Greenville. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Well, it is. It's leading up, right? This whole dirtiness that politics is. So I tell my consultant staff that, hey, look, I'm switching out. I'm going to challenge Greg Murphy. Well, some of my consultants had worked with him and for him and still had some conflicting interests. And they were like, Hemon and Hahn, they're like, I don't know. We believe in you, Tony, but challenging Greg and Hemon and Hahn, they didn't want to be on a losing team, right? And I was like, look, guys, I get it. The chances of me beating this dude is zero. I understand. But he's a rhino. He's got a less than 70% conservative rating. He's not a gun guy. He's not a Second Amendment guy. He voted for the red flag laws in that NDAA, from year before last. Yeah, man, I got no problems challenging this dude. I said I was going to run in the county that I was in, and here we are. Well, they started him and Hahn, so, we terminated my entire consulting staff.
Wow.
Right. And I'll tell you, man, politics is dirty and nasty, slimy all the way down to the consultants. They're probably they're like the, you know what I mean? They're the sewer dwellers, man. They're the people in the background doing all the dirty and the nasty shit. And I was already pissed with them anyway. They were unreliable. They were always late. It was supposed to have like a hit time of an announcement or something. You know what I mean? Just, I don't know. I guess maybe less military minded.
Now, Tony, I got a question now. The consultants, from what I understand, they never go anywhere. I mean, these guys are pretty much career consultants. I mean, these guys just go from candidate to candidate. Isn't that the case? Okay. I mean, politics they're part of the political class. Is that?
They are.
Okay.
They're part of the political machine, the establishment. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a point. I was talking to my main consultant who's been at it for 20-some years, man, and he's helped win some pretty serious elections. We were talking about campaign finance, and a lot of your viewers probably don't know about campaign finance because I didn't. And I'm still, man, the laws regarding campaign finance are so complex that I had to hire an outside consultant specifically for that, who was not part of my consultant team, just to make sure we were all doing the right shit. Like, that's her only job. And luckily she was awesome. She was the only consultant I kept on all the way through. But we were talking about campaign finance, and I was like, this is absolutely absurd. So basically an individual taxpayer, either one of you guys can give a campaign, a federal campaign, Congress, Senate, whatever, $2,800. Your household, you and your wife, or, I mean, it's 2022, husband, whatever you're into, right, can give $2,900. So double, right? It really doesn't even make sense that the legal language says that, because it's literally, right? But it just makes it where you can write a $5,900 check out of y'all's joint check account. So corporations cannot give directly to a campaign, but corporations can give to a committee or a PAC, a political action committee, and it's unlimited. And if it's a certain type of PAC, anonymous. Right.
Loopholes.
Yeah. So, right. So the individual tax-paying voting American can only give $2,800, but I don't know, say Pfizer, a German company with a U.S. subsidiary, Pfizer USA. So Pfizer USA, not Pfizer in Germany, can give, I don't know, say the Dr. Greg Murphy, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. And somebody said, well, you had a max contribution from the guys at Black Rifle Coffee. I'm like, yeah. JT and Evan both gave me $5,900 for their households. I'm like, but it was for their individuals, right? My PAC didn't take any, right? I didn't have corporate support. Of the $200 some thousand I raised, it was all individuals, and I was very proud of that. To win, you need more, right? To win, I would have needed in this first election, I would have needed $2 million to challenge Greg Murphy, and I would have needed 10 months, not 10 months.
Now
my point to I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just curious because so we have the gerrymandered North Carolina Supreme Court dictated districts.
Right.
So this new district that you ended up being in, what comprised that district? So in the sort of the demographics of that district that you were dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. So it was basically northeastern North Carolina. And no one ever saw Sampson County, which is starting to encroach into the Piedmont just slightly, being lumped into that district. It's always been kind of Onslow County all the way up the coast, only coming inland to Pitt County, right. Craven County, Lenoir County. So it was 15 counties, man. It was huge. From my house to the northern end, like Moyock, 6 hours.
So
the upside.
Campaigning. I mean, I'm just just looking at the map. For those of you not familiar with North Carolina, I mean, you got the sounds and what Albemarle Sound and a bunch of. It's kind of challenging if you wanted to drive that district.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in my mind. I'm thinking, man. I mean, if you wanted to visit every place within your district, you better pack a lunch.
Hey, man, I put 22,000 miles on my truck in 10 weeks. Wow. In the 10 weeks that I was campaigning in District 3, 22,000 miles. I would leave my house. If I came home, I would leave my house at 6:37 in the morning. And I got home before midnight in that 10 weeks. I think it was 6 times. And before 11 o'clock, like 4 times. It was nuts, man. I mean, you finish up 9 o'clock, and folks would want to, at whatever meeting, and folks would want to hang out and talk another hour, and so if I was within a couple hours from the house, I would drive home. If I was up north in Dare County or somewhere like that, I'd get a hotel. Gone all the time. But my point with that campaign finance was, I brought it up to my consultant that, man, campaign finance needs to be reformed. We have to eliminate this whole patch. We have to stop corporations from influencing our elections, because that's what they're doing. It's direct influence, because money is the election. My campaign consultant, my political consultants, he went, bro, you should never, ever say that where anyone with the RNCC or anyone in leadership hears you say that. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, man, don't you know this is how it's run? That money, right? Campaign freaking finance is its own commodity. And while there are very strict rules on what you can and cannot spend it on, right? I, as a candidate, can give you a candidate or a seated congressperson a max contribution. So let's say I had decided not to run in 3 and I was sitting on over $200,000. I just became a PAC. I could distribute that money, no questions asked, max contribution of $5,900 to any candidate or any sitting congressperson that is also a candidate, whatever I wanted. So when my consultant said that, I just kind of looked at him. I was like, oh my God. That was when I realized that he was part of the problem too. So like I said, when we switched districts, man, I pretty much reeled in a bunch of SF guys and some other military types and folks I had made friends with to help me. And it worked great. A couple of these guys, one of the guys who was, he was actually in the Ranger Regiment and then worked for the agency a little bit. He became my oppositional research guy. And he's going to continue with a career with it. He did an amazing job. And I actually have sent him to, some of the other Green Berets that are running. There were 8 SF guys running for Congress. And now there are 2 left, and both of them are in North Carolina. That's, Pat Harrington and Christian Castanelli. And both of them won their primaries. And a lot of folks don't know this. They won their primaries with no help from the RNCC, right? The Republican Party does not want barrel-chested freedom fighters on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of guys come to mind. Joe Kent, obviously out in Washington, is doing very well and won his primary. But basically, I would say he's echoing the same sort of sentiments that you're talking about today, which is the challenges of going up against the rhino establishment.
Well, Joe was different than me. We were very similar in the fact that we were challenging rhino Republican dirtbags. Joe worked for Trump and got Trump's endorsement. Right? I did not get an endorsement from Trump, which, in hindsight, I don't really care. I said from the very beginning, I would rather lose clean than win dirty. And I personally think Trump's endorsements are also interference in our elections. I'm not against Trump in any way, shape, or form, but I'm not like a Trump worshiper, right? The party, our nation, it's not one man. And for people to look at him as like some type of savior of this nation, that scares me a little bit. It's disheartening. Now, would I have taken his endorsement?
Of course,
certainly,
of course,
because it would have made a big difference in my election.
Isn't one of the reasons why the establishment, and this goes for both parties, likes the corporate money, is because it is sort of the buffer or the pushback against populism?
Certainly, right?
I mean, they don't maintain any control. I mean, if they let the average person elect their representatives, I mean, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, no. And it's funny, right? Like Greg Murphy's pretty famous for saying, and it wasn't caught on tape, but a bunch of people were present when he said something along the lines of, they didn't elect me to vote, to vote the way they want. They elected me for my brain. Like, just condescending as hell, man. At one point, so there was a veterans group and a group in Onslow County who were adamantly against Greg. And some of the people had helped get him elected, and they just felt betrayed, right? And he referred to them as a cancer in the district. Well, the funny part was, like the weird part was, one of them is a cancer survivor. He got cancer from the damn burn pits in Afghanistan. Right? So, I mean, it's just, man, the condescension. They truly think they're smarter and better. And that's, to me, man, that is like, it's despicable. And it's just how they look and how they talk. And I talked to a bunch of different representatives during this time, and they all, for the most part, had that same type of sentiment, just that they were better. They knew better because they really know what's going on. And to me, the fact that they really know what's going on makes them complicit, But yeah, man, I'll tell you, looking on the back end, you guys, this is the first time I've done a podcast talking about this stuff since the end of the election. And of course, that was in May. I chatted with John Burke on his podcast right afterwards, and I was very reserved because I didn't know if I was going to run again. And now I don't really think so, but even if I do, I just don't care. Man, the corruption in the Republican Party goes all the way down to the county and the precinct level. It's gross.
I think there is a realization today by a lot of folks that this thing is beyond your parents and grandparents, Democrat and Republican parties.
Absolutely.
This thing is really morphed into sort of a globalism, Marxism versus nationalism, capitalism type of argument going on now. I think people that are married to political parties really need to get caught up. Just because a guy has a D or an R is worthless. Right. You really need to figure out whether this person is beholden to China and corporate interests.
Certainly.
Or if he actually is a nationalist, loves his country, and is in for individual liberty and freedom. If we don't figure out those two sides pretty quick, we're probably going to be in a pickle.
Oh yeah, I say the two parties are, they're two wings on the same damn bird, and it was just disgusting after disgusting. When we were making that switch, right, between the districts, when there was no incumbent that I was challenging, I was on the phone with Dan Crenshaw. I was on the phone with Representative Waltz, and I'm not going to call him Colonel because that would imply that he was somehow, linked to us, the SF brothers. The second I announced I was challenging an incumbent, I couldn't get Representative Waltz to return a text or a phone call. Dan actually did, and that's when he was like, yeah, man, I can't help you. Greg Murphy's beholden to Kevin McCarthy, man. I can't go against that. I'll lose all my committee seats. Yeah, no, sorry, can't help you. Yeah. It was disgusting. And so I was just shaking my head. I was like, so you guys are saying you believe that I would be a better representative, but you're not going to help me because you're worried about what Kevin McCarthy will do to you. Who do you work for, Kevin McCarthy or your constituents? Well, the answer is they work for Kevin McCarthy, and your Republican senators work for Mitch McConnell. If you cross them, you don't get committees. Do you know how many committees Marjorie Taylor Greene is on?
Yeah. Zero.
Not one.
Right.
Yeah.
Zero. Right? Matt Gaetz, same deal, man. They try and crush him constantly. And how about our own Madison Cawthorn?
Yeah, they drummed him out.
Yep.
They financed their RNCC, man. They financed Madison's opponent. So an incumbent can be unseated if the establishment wants it so. And that's just what happened,
Well, see, that's kind of why I brought up the district that you were competing in, because in the instances where I've seen the Populist win against huge amounts of money provided by the RNC, was because of their ability to talk to individual people.
Yeah.
And they were just able to outmaneuver, if you would, their opponent. Yeah. They were able to move faster and talk directly to the people, where the ads were, the attack ads primarily. I mean, it's usually nothing on substance. It's usually always just an attack ad. That's what the RNC does.
Yep.
But I'm looking at your district, and I'm going, that's a very difficult district to employ that strategy, that winning strategy.
And we only had 10 weeks. And in that 10 weeks, we were still able to gain, 12 to 20% of the vote in different precincts out of only 10% that came out to vote, right? In a midterm primary, not many people vote, right? 1 out of 100 people bothered to vote in the 3 weeks of voting opportunities that they had in North Carolina. 1 out of 10. Right. And there's 470 some thousand people in every district in North Carolina. So only 40,000 people bothered to come out and vote. And they're typically, the folks who vote often. They voted last time, so they recognize Greg's name. Right. So that right there is huge. Just name recognition. And of course, it was really disheartening. Greg, the one thing he did really smart is he had women attack me. I mean, he's a spineless coward type anyway, right? Like he wouldn't debate me, right? You would think someone that knows so much would be very confident to get on stage with his opponents, but he wouldn't. And so anyway, he used women's groups to speak out against me, which was funny. Up north, he was able to influence them a little bit, but Onslow County women, Craven County women, they were all they're so fed up with him because he even suggested that, this is a Republican now. He suggested that even pregnant women get the vaccine.
Wow.
He was all
That's
pro-vaccine.
insane.
He voted for every single thing that funded the mandate, so on and so forth. There's pictures of him administering the vaccine to people, right?
Yeah, well, I think that may have worked for him in 2020.
Right.
I'm not sure. That's probably going to come back and backfire against him because, obviously as time goes on, we're learning a lot more about the effects of the vaccine, especially
oddly
on
now,
mothers.
Enough, he's very, adamant against the vaccine now.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that.
But yeah, man, he had different, women try to attack me. And then at one point they were trying to attack my career. And I had talked about, I got blown up in 2009. Well, I got out of the Army in 2005. And this one young lady who touted herself as a combat veteran. And I think she got out in 2012, which was before women were in combat MOSs. So it was kind of, you're a combat vet. Oh, no, you were stationed in Kuwait. Cool. Gotcha, honey. She was being dirty, just nasty. And she ran a Republican women's face group page, man, just being nasty. And so the Guardians of Green Beret stepped in. They announced that, hey, look, blah, blah, blah. But what it was is she was just too dumb to understand that I wasn't, an intel officer at the agency. She didn't understand. She didn't know where I was working, and that the CIA doesn't give Purple Hearts, because that was her thing. She was like, well, if your service was, truthful, then you would have a Purple Heart for when you got hurt in 2009. I was like, I wasn't in the Army, So it was comical, yet also very frustrating, because the reality is, in this day and age, they can say whatever they want. They can just lie, right? There's no way to hold a political officer accountable. They can say whatever they want. Yeah, you could sue them for libel, but I mean, who's got the money for that?
Let me ask you a question too. Did you, the 2020 election had a lot of problems, and we're just beginning to scratch the surface of those problems. And of course, right. I remember Captain Seth Keshel, famous guy that's gone in there and really kind of done some pretty good work as far as where the numbers are really at. Yeah, and now North Carolina, big red flags were popping up for North Carolina. Captain Seth Keshel said we had a lot of issues in North Carolina. I wonder even how much of that may have come to play.
Well, I will tell you this, man. I don't want to ever sound like a whiny or fussy loser, right? Because, like I said, I try to tell people I knew the outcome of our election. We knew it going into it. So I'm not bitter that we lost. I'm not upset that we lost. I'm aggravated and frustrated that the system is so established. So, you're talking about Seth. Seth should be a household name in the United States, and it's sad that it's not. He's worked so hard. Was lucky enough to talk to him numerous times during my campaign. Did a fundraiser with us. Just, yeah, man, holy crap.
Yeah, great guy. He's done a lot of great work for the country.
Yeah, and most people have never heard of him. So
we're still using machines, of course.
Right.
These machines. If anyone thinks you're getting a fair election out of a machine, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Okay.
And I was prefacing, I don't want to sound bitter or whatever. So I'm from Pamlico County. I grew up there, right? I know a lot of people in Pamlico and New Bern, Craven County, a lot. And the results of our election, our primary, it was almost the exact same numbers across the district, right? Statistically, almost impossible. But when you look at Pamlico, the one place I should have at least gotten 30%, right? It's only 12,000 people that live there. And I guarantee you half of them know my name, right? So there was no more of a spike in voters for me in Pamlico than the other counties where I was clearly lesser known, right? It's suspect. It is suspect at a minimal. So anyway,
they certainly don't instill confidence.
Right. At that, and I am still the guy who really doesn't want to say out loud that our elections are screwed. Right. Like I'm still trying to hold on to that little bit of faith.
No, they are. You can overcome them. I mean, listen, they can be overcome. Okay. There's only, the fraud can only be utilized to a point.
Right.
So there are some techniques, of course, that folks are doing to try to override the fraud. But let's just be honest. I mean, I'm not even going to play games anymore. If anyone thinks Biden got 81 million votes,
right,
you need your head examined. Okay,
for sure.
That's it. Just defies logic. Okay,
right,
and
it defies.
Common sense. I mean, listen, you can sit there, you can tell me 100 times that, he got 81 million votes. It's like, yeah, no, he didn't. Okay. I'm sorry.
Right.
And we do have problems but I think the things that you're talking about, okay, the establishment setup, all right, the fact that they've, the political classes has created this system by which they can maintain the power and decide who comes into the country club and who doesn't.
Absolutely.
I think the voting machines are absolutely a part of that.
For sure.
And so you've really scratched the surface here. You've really gone in and you've kind of looked behind the curtain.
That's, I use that analogy quite often. And I just got to peek just for a very brief second. And I got to see the way people behave, right? Like Ryan Zinke, the soft pack. Talk to him, and he was like, no. You know what I mean? It was just like all the people that the soft community, or even people looking outside, right? Like if I tell my next door neighbor that I couldn't get the support of a former Navy SEAL over an incumbent, right? Like they would be like, what do you mean? How? Why? Well, because when Ryan looked at my numbers and looked at, oh, you're challenging an incumbent. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. He's like, yeah, I mean, I can't give you enough money to beat him. So, and I understand that, right? Like no organization wants to waste their money, not even the Republican Party. And, to the flip side, right? Barbara Gaskins is the Democrat female challenging Greg in the general election. She got the Democrat nominee. The Democrats won't give her a dime to challenge Greg Murphy because the Democrat Party knows that a black Democrat female cannot beat Greg Murphy
in that district
in North Carolina District 3.
Yeah.
Just like the Republican Party, what's the young lady's name who won the Wake County? Wake County is a district all by itself. Right. She beat Adina. I can't think of her name. Well, anyway, she's done, right? She won the Republican nomination, but she can't touch Barbara or Deborah Ross. Can't touch her.
Not in that
Republican
district.
Party has given her $0. You know what I mean? It is a money game through and through. Money game through and through. And when I say they won't even give them money, they won't even give them support. They won't publicly endorse them or nothing. It is, yeah.
They don't want to spend the capital. They don't want to spend they don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah. I told somebody the other day, I was like, whenever I see Elon Musk's name in a headline, I keep crossing my fingers that he's announcing a third party. Without a third party, like a viable something that can challenge these two monsters. I don't know, man. I think that's the only path that leads America out of this mess.
The thing, and the reality is, we already have several parties.
But a viable one.
But
right?
but the Republican and Democrat parties have a monopoly on the game.
Right. Yes.
And so, really, what needs to happen is that needs to go away. So, right. The Libertarian Party, the Green Party, I mean, whatever party that you ascribe to has a fair shot. They should be at the debates and everything else.
Yeah. No, so Barbara Gaskins, she's actually very physically conservative. She's a little more socially liberal than I am, or than pretty much any conservative. But she's very smart. I actually enjoy talking to her, and I'm going to vote for her over Greg. So yes, I am going to vote for a Democrat, and the vote will be lost, right? But anyway, yeah, man, a viable third party means one with enough money to challenge the other two. And that's why I say Elon Musk, because clearly he not only has the money, he's friends with all the people who have the money, and so on and so forth. And yeah, if you go back and look throughout our Congress's history, if you want to look at votes and find some ones that are almost unanimous, where both parties voted for them, look at the ones that increase their salaries, that increase their benefits, that increase their staff's power, benefits, reach, longevity. Those are the type of votes that you will find that both parties agree almost 100%. And it's always those votes that was consolidating and protecting them both. Right? Because let's face it, right? The Republican Party doesn't want the Democrat Party to dissolve and implode, and the Democrat Party doesn't want the Republican Party to dissolve and implode, even though it is.
No, it's
right?
true.
The Republican Party is falling apart.
It's a uniparty. The people that use that term uniparty, they don't like that term.
No,
but it is a uniparty. It is controlled opposition. If you don't understand that, I can't help you. I mean, you've ran for Congress. You know this to be true.
Yeah.
When you challenge the uniparty, whether it's Republican or Democrat, they're going to squash you.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this: is the third going to stay the same, or are these things going to get redistricted again?
I think it'll get redistricted again. The districts as they sit right now are not something that a Republican legislature is going to continue to support. So I think what's going to happen is after November, that North Carolina Supreme Court is most likely picking up another conservative. And at that point, they'll control the House, and the Republicans will control the House and the court. That will make Cooper's veto worthless.
Now, so if you end up again in, let's say, the 4th district, well, that may have an impact on whether or not you run again.
Yeah, I always tell people I don't see the world in 2 + 2 = 4. I always see the world as an equation with results, right? So you got all these variables, and you're actually the first person to pose that question, typically because I mostly interact on the political spectrum with folks in the 3rd district, and they're not even thinking, they're thinking about 3rd district and will I run again in the 3rd district? So you're actually the first person to ask me if something like the 4th came back up, would I do it then? That would have to very much depend on a lot of other of the variables where we're at. I mean, we're looking at least another year. And there's also, this part of me who, a lot of Americans, gave me $50. That was my, my median. The amount of dollars most often contributed to my campaign was $50, right? So across America, some hardworking dude gave me, gals, gave me 50 of their hard-earned dollars, and I didn't win. In my heart, I feel like I wasted their time and money. And people always tell me, "No, Tony, that's not the way to look at it." Hey, I get it, but I can't help it, right? I just can't help it. So I don't know how I would feel about trying to fire up that again and asking the same people, to give me $50. I don't know.
Well, here's my thoughts for what it's worth, which isn't much. I think you're very close to that last election. I think you're pretty close to it. But here's the thing. You do know you learned a lot from it. And sometimes you learn more from losing than you do from winning.
Oh, that's the truth.
So
those ARs are always the bad.
Yes. So to me, actually, your value now as a candidate has increased exponentially, and I think I know for a fact you would do things differently because it's just from the lessons learned.
Certainly.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I think as soon as good people stop trying, we're doomed. So I don't know exactly what. I know you're going to stay involved in politics. I can just tell by listening to you. You're going to stay involved because you care.
It's tough, man.
Yeah, but you care. I mean, you care like the rest of us. You might be you might end up helping somebody, chief of staff, or running.
And
but it's a moving environment. I mean, it's a moving target.
The amount of disrespect that Greg Murphy and his people gave me, right? It's one. Hey, man,
that might be reason enough.
I never attacked that man personally. Like I kept his family out of it. He's got a horrible family history, right? His kids hate him, all that stuff. I kept that. I never touched it. I never reached out to his family. I tried to keep it professional. He did not extend that same courtesy to me. So what he earned is an adversary in me for the rest of his life, no matter what he's working on. So one way or another, whoever challenges Greg Murphy in District 3 next cycle, I will be helping them.
My friend, I think the establishment that we've been talking about and kind of talking about the salient points of it, they're counting on us, just guys like us not doing that.
Nothing. They don't want it around, man.
Yeah, so guys like us, guys like you, the guys that have been there, you've seen the third world nations. You see all the blessings that we have here that are not free. And you know that, so you're definitely the guy that we need at the helm.
And I will tell you, talking to the other 8 GBs, right, like Jay Collins down in Florida, he got talked out of running for Congress for running for state senator, right?
Well, you bring up a good point, and we're gonna come back to this. Go ahead.
No, all those other 8 GBs, like I said, the only ones left, freaking, are Casanelli and Pat here in North Carolina. They, like I said, none of us got any support, to include from SF brothers. Right? That's been one of our biggest gripes as we were progressing through this thing, is how little support we've gotten from retirees or from the SFA. Right? I mean, and it's so frustrating because, the answer is always, well, we're a nonprofit. We can't be political.
Yeah, it's a cop-out.
And it is absolutely a cop-out, right? Because it's not that you can't be political. You can't, officially endorse or financially support a candidate. But you can send out blasts like, hey, look, SF brother, Casanelli is running for Congress. And that's how you end it, right? You don't have to say sending money, say nothing, right? You can just put up his website. That is not picking sides or anything like that. It's just like everything in politics, there's always a way around it, right? And so it was actually, one of the things all of us talked about. Bacon out in Arizona, he withdrew. Kent, we're all in a group chat together, and that was our biggest frustration, is how little support we were getting from SF and SOCOM in general. Retirees. Hell, Sergeant Major Zetz, when I was running in the 4th, came out and was openly supporting, the North Carolina congressman. North Carolina representative, hell, I done forgot his name, there for Cumberland County. And I was sitting there looking at Sergeant Major going, hey, man, you could have, we could have at least talked before you endorsed, this former Army officer who sold North Carolina taxpayers out for Green New Deal bullshit. But anyway, I was just kind of blown away, SF guys, right? Let's face it. When we retire, for the most part, what do the guys do, man? They go, they build them a man cave, and they kind of disappear. They're,
Yeah.
I mean, this generation of SF dude
We
is done
withdraw.
fighting. They're done
Yeah.
fighting. I mean, the fight has been worked out of us.
Yeah.
So I also understand why your average soft dude is like, screw this. I'm just going to go out back, drink some beer, and cook some burgers. you know, but I'm gonna tell you, man, it's going to take all of us and all of the $50,000 to $60,000 a year blue collar Americans getting up off their asses and getting involved. That's what can change this country. Because nobody wants to see some type of second revolution, civil war bullshit, right? Like nobody wants that. You hear people talk about revolution, but they're typically people that have enjoyed air conditioning and Wi-Fi their whole lives. Those of us who have been to all these places and seen it and done it, and I like Wi-Fi and air conditioning. I don't want to go that route. And not that it's anywhere close to that, but we're looking at definitely a recession, looking at potential depression, economic collapse, lack of, voter confidence. I mean, one bad thing in this country, we're always one bad catastrophe from things kind of going to shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that. But until people are willing to get up, get involved, go to their local GOP meeting and take back the Republican Party, if that's what they want, or it's going to take someone like Elon Musk starting a third party that people can get behind and get passionate about. Because there's not a lot of passion. And it was sad. The passion I saw in the Republican Party were the ones who were just power grabbing that county chair who she's looking at a representative or a city council spot. You know what I mean? It was, that type of person is the only person who's really passionate. People who want America
in their own self-interest. Yeah.
Right. People who want the good of the rest of this nation, they're just frustrated.
Let me ask you this. I don't have too much. I'm not optimistic about the swamp getting drained. I've been up there too many times.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. What about you? You mentioned the state. Okay, you mentioned the state earlier that some of these folks have been changed their mind and ran for state office. Isn't the answer maybe just the local politics and fixing the state and making sure that Pineland is squared away and that way we can sort of defend ourselves from some of the abuse of the swamp?
Federal government.
Yes.
Yeah, you would think. So here's and everybody says local politics. Yeah, Tony, you should go run. I'm like, look, here's why that's wrong. That's the way it should be. It's absolutely the way it should be. It was the way our founding fathers intended it to be. For the county government to be the most powerful, for the state to be independent of the federal government. That's clearly what they intended. It's not what we have. And here's how I can tell you. In the second week after I announced I was running against Greg Murphy, I had just left a meeting with state representative for Oslo County, and where he said he was completely supportive of me. He was campaigning for me. He took me and introduced me at different at a breakfast spot, where all the old boys eat, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome. That afternoon, Greg Murphy posted that he had the endorsement of every single state representative in District 3. I just had breakfast with one of them who was campaigning for me. And I'm like, wait a minute. I immediately call that state representative. I'm like, what the? And he's like, I didn't give him permission. I was like, wait, what? You're telling me that he's saying you are endorsing him without asking you? He's like, absolutely. And I actually, this fella is as honest as a politician could be. I took him to be an honest person. And while honest, good people are in politics, there are none with spines. Because when I asked him if he was going to announce that Greg Murphy had done that without his person, he's like, well, Tony, I can't, because, I'll lose, my district will lose federal dollars that he can get for us if I outwardly come out against him. And it was the same with the sheriffs. he basically told him, if you come out and support Tony Cowden, I'll make sure you don't get your federal grant money. So your sheriffs, your state representatives, they're working for the federal, our senators and our congressmen and women. It's backwards, man.
Yeah,
this is direct, all true shit. And people might want to say
direct, it's direct taxation from the federal level, which is that's not constitutional.
It's extortion. It's straight up extortion, man.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The tentacles, the very long tentacles. Wow.
Yeah, and it was weird because like Onslow County Sheriff, I don't think he's 100% there anymore. He's on his way out. He's retiring. His name's Hans Miller. I'll actually drop his name. Onslow County Sheriff not only endorsed Greg, but then started like attacking me with these weird tirades on Facebook. And he would say something like, this guy's against the Patriot Act. Clearly he doesn't know anything about counterterrorism. And people would put in the comments like, hey, he's like a counterterrorism type of guy, right? And, I'm fairly familiar with like FISA warrants and all that kind of stuff and how that process worked and all that. And having read the entire Patriot Act through and through 6 or 7 times, man, it is one of the most insane overreaches of our federal government in U.S. history. Only rivaled by Lincoln and Honest Abe and George Bush #2, revoking habeas corpus, right? Those the 3 things, huge government overreaches, right? Well, this sheriff was like basically saying because I wasn't for the Patriot Act that I'm very against it. It should be repealed. That I didn't know anything about protecting America. And it just showed you like how ignorant and backwoods some of the thinking still is, just because you name an act the Patriot Act. Because someone asked him at a meeting that I was president at, like, hey, Sheriff, have you ever read the Patriot Act? And in section such and such, do you know what it means when it says? And dude, he just stood there like an idiot. He'd never read it before.
Well, yeah, but it's got the word patriot in it. It's got
the
to be
talking
good.
point. Yeah. Hey, just parrot the talking points and then get your pay.
Just like the Affordable Care Act is affordable.
Right.
It's got the word right in there. The debt reduction act is got to take down the debt because it's right in the title.
NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. That sounds like we were going to spend money on our military.
Yeah, as long as it's in the title, it's got to do that.
Yeah. Here's an interesting little tidbit from this summer, the NDAA that they passed back in late June, early July. AOC, right? I mean, we all pretty much agree she's
our hero,
the devil, right? She's the devil. She's got to be Satan. Well, check it out. She introduced an amendment that would allot almost $200 billion for research into unconventional medicines for veterans for TBI and PTSD. And when they said unconventional medicines, psychedelics. So other countries have gone so far with psilocybin, ibogaine, all these psychedelics. And I don't know personally, right? But I do know soft guys who have participated in some of these studies and had absolutely miraculous results for TBI and PTSD, especially PTSD. I'm talking about guys becoming different people, going from just angry, pissed off, PTSD guys, right? To doing one of these retreats, whether it be ayahuasca or one of these psychedelics, and they literally are better, like cured. So, and again, this is very anecdotal. I don't know anything about the research or whatever. Long story short, AOC was going to give and add to the NDAA $200 million to fund this unconventional research. Matt Gaetz endorsed her amendment, and the Republicans shot it down. Your big pharma donors.
Big pharma didn't like that.
If you look at who voted against her amendment, and go to opensecrets.org, right? People need to know this website, because you can look and see who donated and who someone donated to, right? You can look at all my campaign finance, right? It's all there. For someone to donate, they have to put their occupation, age, address, all that shit. It is very public domain stuff. Well, if you look at who voted against AOC's amendment, It's all people who had big contributions from big pharma donors.
They just follow the
Not
money.
a coincidence, bro. Not a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think that surprises anybody.
Yeah, man. I mean, because let's face it, there has been no progress in TBI treatment in the last 12 years. Nothing. And Canada, Mexico, Panama, South Korea, India, all these countries are out there leading the way, with other types of non-pharmaceutical treatments and getting purportedly amazing results. And our own freaking congressmen and women, right, are very much against it. It's not a coincidence, man. I don't believe in coincidence probably any more than you guys do.
Tony, you've really pulled back the curtain, and I've seen quite a lot. I'm not sure if everyone was ready for that, but you've seen the beasts behind the curtain and all that. What advice could you give us? Guys like right now, our listenership.
Yeah. So before we go any further, and before I forget, I would like to just go ahead and say that I do not suffer from PTSD. I am not suicidal, and I am not ever going to harm myself.
Right on, man.
Yeah, you're not paranoid when they're really after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think. I think I'm too small of a player for to get suicided for speaking out a little bit.
Yep.
But still, it's a joke, but it's not even a funny one anymore, right? That we literally have, people out there being suicided.
Yep.
And nothing being done about it, right? I mean, this whole, pedophilia, what's his name? The Epstein and his Madam.
Pleasure Island. Yeah.
Man.
Seth Rich. I mean, the names
if
go
that
on.
right there is not if that right there is not enough to convince America that the establishment has a true hold on the DOJ, our courts, your DAs. Oh my God, man. What else is there, right? What else is there? And we're all just sitting here going, what do we do? We don't know what to do.
So we do vote at the local level. That's something we do.
Yeah.
That's
and vote on election day. They say
vote
come out in a horde on election day.
I will tell you this. If instead of 10 to 30% of the voters coming out to vote across America, if 60% of them did, it would overwhelm the capabilities of election fraud, right? There's a bunch of different ways of doing it, right? There's even the machines. So there are, you can send out absentee ballots. That was a big deal in Bladen County a couple years ago. Bladen County, it was Republicans that got slammed with the fraud.
That's right.
Yeah, and they were doing, and I don't understand it 100%, but basically what they were doing, they were sending out absentee ballots. And once someone receives an absentee ballot, then they can't vote. So if they don't send in an absentee ballot, it actually will stifle the other side, not give them votes, but take votes from them. Pretty genius. So if people don't realize, I didn't realize, that there are other ways of manipulating the elections, influencing them, altering them, interfering, whatever you want to say. So I don't know, to folks out there, I get it. I hear people say all the time, what are we supposed to do? Vote harder?
Get engaged,
care. And my answer, get
engaged, care,
yes,
and vote on election day. Overwhelm the fraud. Listen, hate to tell you this, voter fraud is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Let me say that again. Voter fraud is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. It's a multifaceted, illegal industry. People, if you can cheat, people are going to try to figure out how to do it. Okay, what we have to do as citizens is care and put measures in place to try to reduce and diminish the fraud as much as possible. That's all we can do.
For sure.
Hey,
and that is by voting.
That is by voting.
It's going to take 6 out of 10 of us instead of 2 and 3 out of 10 of us. But like you said, go to your local GOP.
Get involved. Become a precinct member.
That's how you take back the party, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to
control,
people really want to take back and replace the establishment party with the MAGA or Trump party or just whatever. That means going to your local level, and every year your county chairs and your precinct chairs are voted on, and they can be voted out.
Yeah.
Replace them with good people. That's the only answer.
Join the school board,
yes,
everything else.
It
Take charge of your local politics,
right.
and
It does. It means missing the kids' soccer game.
Yep.
It means missing your, freaking gym session. It means missing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're up against the wall here. I tell you what, thank you for thank you for joining us today. This has been enlightening.
Absolutely.
It's critical. It's timely, and I think people need to know the reality of the environment. We got to come out of la la land. People need to hear the cold hard facts, and I appreciate you coming on as a person that's had a chance to look behind the curtain and sharing that with fellow Pinelanders. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you guys for having me, man.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely have to bring you back on. And anyway, listen, 2022, 2024, give it a thought, man. It's right around the corner.
Hey, you know what, man? I don't rule out any course of action.
There you go. All right,
not ruling anything out yet.
All right, thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Great chatting with you.
Our
Thanks,
pleasure.
sir.
All right.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander Podcast, and if you enjoy our content, we hope you'll check out our sponsors. Blacksmith Publishing has been serving the Warrior class since 2013. We have great titles written by Warriors for Warriors. If you're looking for a great book, check out blacksmithpublishing.com. And if you're looking for some cool apparel, head on over to the general store located at pinelander1776.com. And until our next meeting, remember, keep your head on a swivel, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, socially astute. And to each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless Pineland, and please remember to vote.